It looks like USC might have found a wide receiver replacement for Deuce Robinson. And what happens if...
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, right on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC. It's part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, whatever platform you want to download this podcast, it's free, and I always appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lincoln Riley apparently saw On3's transfer portal class rankings for the Big Ten Conference and said, whoa, got to change that now. I'm going to go over that ranking here shortly. But first, how did that ranking change? Well, USC added now former Boise State wide receiver. His name is Prince Strachan. Yeah, like that name. At the top, I called him Deuce's replacement. He's probably more Jacoby Lane than Deuce Robinson when you compare body styles. USC's newest Prince of Troy is listed at 6'5", 211 pounds. So he's kind of on the slender side. Strawn, he literally just wrapped up his third season with Boise State. Remember, he was in the playoffs. So got a Mountain West title. He got a ring on a finger. And again, he got to be playing the playoffs this past season, something USC's still trying to do. In his second season, I know that he's wrapping up his third year with Boise State. He redshirted his first year. In his second season, he snagged 25 catches, totaled 304 yards, and he had one touchdown. Played in all 14 games, and he had 5 starts. His best performance came in the playoff game against Penn State, 4 catches, 40 yards. We know Penn State just ended up losing to Notre Dame in the semifinals. So Prince is coming to USC. He's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. I, again, just mentioned he took a red shirt in his freshman year, 2022. You look at his overall numbers at Boise, pretty decent in 28 games. Let's see, he's got 37 catches, 578 yards, 3 touchdowns. The reason why I think this is probably a really good pull out of the transfer portal, number one, USC needs experienced depth in that room. So Prince brings experience. And also, he's not going to demand more touches than Makai Lemon or Jacoby Lane. And then as far as the current depth chart is concerned, I said USC needed experienced depth. Kyle Ford, he's used up his eligibility. Kyron Hudson, he's now a Penn State Nittany Lion. I mentioned they just lost their playoff game. It's amazing. It's crazy to think, though, that Drew Allar, their quarterback, did not complete one pass to a wide receiver in that game. Not one. All the passes went to either the running back or the tight end. Good luck, Kyron. USC lost more depth. They were anticipating getting back. They would have been juniors in 2025. USC, they said, we're not paying number one NIL money to 4 wide receivers. Can't do it. And if Zachariah Branch and Deuce Robinson aren't putting up number one numbers, USC said, hey, we got to make a business decision here. So again, adding Prince to the wide receiver room, it balances it out with more experience. Reminding everybody, USC brought in 3. They're bringing in 3 true freshmen with their 2025 recruiting class, but they only brought in 1 in 2024. Xavier Jordan, DJ. So, and again, I'm not trying to kick a guy when he's down, but it does make you wonder what would have happened had Ryan Pelham honored his decision to come to USC. Would he be in his situation he's in right now? Don't know. But because USC only brought in 1 wide receiver in 2024, they're adding 3 more freshmen in this class. You had to get at least 1 out of the transfer portal. So I like the numbers where USC is at right now. Don't forget, you also got Jay Fair coming back, DJ Jordan. I just mentioned the young guys. Let's not overstock this room again. You can't have too many mouths to feed. Talked about that on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC. So Coach Riley filled another need out of the transfer portal, but according to On3, it doesn't matter if USC's filling their needs, they're just not doing very well. Before Strawn signed on to be a Trojan, On3, the network, they released their Big Ten Conference transfer portal rankings. There are 18 teams, 18, 1-8 in the big conference. USC's transfer class is ranked number 17, just ahead of Purdue. Yeah, how's that feel? Look, if you're wondering who was number one, it was Michigan. Guess who was number two? It'll blow you away. Rutgers. Yes, that Rutgers. The one from New Jersey. On3's Team Transfer Portal Index utilizes the On3 performance score to measure a team's production during the transfer process, compared relative against its roster and not a comparison against other schools. This proprietary algorithm determines if a school has improved its overall team talent, stayed the same, or declined in talent during the transfer window. Good thing that it's a proprietary formula, because I can't make heads or tails out of this. I tried, I figured, I said, forget it. As I mentioned, Michigan has the number one class. They have 23 guys who left their program jumping into the transfer portal. They had 13 that's jumped in to Ann Arbor. They added 3 4-stars. They lost 0 4-stars. They added 9 3-stars, and they lost 23 3-stars off their roster. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if Michigan was number one, here's USC's transfer portal numbers. 21 guys ducked out. They said, we don't want to be Trojans anymore. And when Prince Strachan joined, that gives USC 10 guys coming back. So USC so far now has added 2 4-stars, they lost 5 4-stars. They've added 7 3-stars. They've lost 16. It also, when I'm looking at this algorithm, it looks like it puts a pretty heavy value on NIL. Zachariah and Deuce, we know they are big-time NIL handouts at USC. They put their hands out again. They're collecting. Well, Zachariah, I believe, is a Georgia Bulldog now, and Deuce Robinson, you already know, is a Florida State Seminole. When it comes to the transfer portal, I'm starting to feel, I don't think USC is going to drop any bags at the skill position. Look, they already let 2 guys walk from the wide receiver room. They told Quentin Joyner, go get your bag somewhere else if you want to be one of the higher paid running backs. Quentin Joyner is now a Texas Tech Red Raider, TTRR. So 2 running backs that USC brought in, Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders. We'll call that a 2-for-1 trade. Those guys aren't going to break the bank. They probably are giving what they wanted to give to Quentin, divided amongst these 2 guys. Look, if USC is going to spend big time money on free agency, in my opinion, the players that they bring in, they've got to be immediate impact players. Again, you're not going to bring somebody in and pay them big time money and upset, the room with Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon. Now, if Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State or Ryan Williams shows serious interest and wants to come to USC, all right, let's open up the conversation. If they come knocking on Lincoln Riley's door, absolutely, you let one of those guys in. You tell Jacoby and Makai, hey, deal with it. This guy's really good. So I think the wide receiver room, they're probably close, maybe bringing another one. I think the running back room is done. We talked about that on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC. Is there an offensive line impact guy out there? or is that more of a spring window purchase that USC is looking towards? I think USC is probably looking towards the spring window. Defensive line room, you got 18 guys in there. I think you're good. I know USC needs a linebacker, maybe two. Maybe naming the linebacker coach soon will help. Sooner the better. Maybe another experienced safety. Kamari Ramsey's returning. But after him, the safety room, it's young. It's talented, but it's young. Now, there is a safety from North Carolina State who was in the transfer portal. He took a visit to USC. He also took a visit to Penn State afterwards. So right now, everyone believes it's down to USC and Penn State for, his name is Bishop Fitzgerald. Typically, when a recruit visits team last, specifically when they're in the transfer portal, the team that's getting the last visit usually ends up getting the player. Well, in case you hadn't heard, this is why you tune in to Locked On USC every day, so I can give you the details, tell you the news. Penn State was feeling like they were in the lead. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, the Nittany Lions defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, he started the interview process, and he actually took the job. He is Dabo Swinney and Clemson's new defensive coordinator. So does USC have the inside track now? I'm going to talk about that and the impact of Penn State losing their defensive coordinator and how it could affect USC. Like, what if? Stay tuned. The 12-team playoff, I like it. I think it's been a success. We're down to two teams, Notre Dame, Ohio State. They're playing for the national championship game. Do you have tickets? Do you want to get tickets? You need to get to Game Time. Game Time has this feature called Game Time Picks. Cool feature. And it makes getting tickets for any event you want to go to really easy, especially if you want to get the best tickets at the best price. They're going to kind of push aside all the fluff. They're only going to show you the best tickets at the best price. And before you check out, my other favorite feature, view from your seat. You click on it, say, hey, if you buy this ticket at this price, this is your view. So there's no risk involved. In fact, Game Time guarantees that if you find a ticket in the same section and row for less, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. Again, you want to go to the playoff game, get to Game Time. You want to go check out a USC basketball game, men or women, get to Game Time. Don't forget USC, UCLA, January 27th, Galen Center. That game will be sold out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms are going to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. If you go check out the Penn State coaching staff directory, their roster, and go straight to the coaching staff, the Nittany Lions, their website has already officially removed defensive coordinator Tom Allen, as well as his son, who I guess was an assistant on the staff. Those guys are now in Clemson, South Carolina. They're now working for Dabo Swinney. That'll probably become public knowledge sometime when you're watching the show this week. What's interesting is Tom Allen was the head coach at Indiana. Right? He set up James Cignetti at Indiana to make the playoffs this year. When Tom Allen was no longer Indiana's head coach, he came over to James Franklin and became his defensive coordinator. Penn State had I'd say top 10 defense in the country this year. You saw it up close and personal against USC. USC put up more points against Penn State's defense than anybody else. Still, with that said, it was a good defense. And what's interesting about this, Tom Allen's leaving. Penn State's returning pretty much everybody from that defense, all their impact players. With that, now, You would think USC has the inside track to get the safety from North Carolina State, Bishop Fitzgerald. Does USC have the inside track? Sure, why not? However, the Nittany Lions need a defensive coordinator. And if you didn't know, USC's defensive coordinator, here's the catch, here's the hook. D'Anton Lynn, yeah, he played college ball at Penn State. So did Navarro Bowman, who many think, including myself, is going to be USC's next linebacker coach. At least his name is being tied to the position. We'll see what happens. USC is paying Coach Lynn huge wads of cash. And he's worth every penny. I mean, every penny. In fact, he might be due a raise. And don't think he doesn't know that right now. I mean, the difference that Coach Lynn made in just 1 year under Coach Riley, it's legendary. I mean, we all watched what he inherited. Yeah, it was a broken defense. I mean, really broken. So what happens? What if Lynn's alma mater starts giving him the sad eyes and gets down on bended knee and says, "Hey, come home"? For those of you who don't know, or like to teach, like to educate, alma mater comes from 2 Latin words. That's right, nourishing or bountiful mother. When mom calls, you listen. Look, I have no idea if Coach Lynn wants to move back to Happy Valley in the middle of nowhere, live in the freezing winters. I'm sure he'd have to ask his wife how she feels about it. Happy wife, happy life, right? Being an assistant coach, you better have a happy wife. To remind everybody, and Eric McKinney over at wearesc.com pointed this out. James Franklin said, ahead of the USC game when they came into LA earlier in 2024, that he doesn't really have a relationship with D'Anton Lynn, but that he does always keep tabs on former Penn State players and coaches, and he's someone who he's on their radar. Let's just put it that way. Excuse me. I'm telling you right now, my feelings, instant reaction, even thinking about it all day long. This would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to Coach Riley. Literally. Because unless Lincoln Riley can convince Nick Saban to come out of retirement and just be a defensive coordinator, I'm not sure there's a hole deep enough for Coach Riley to hide in. And it wouldn't be his fault. I'm not blaming Coach Riley, but the timing would suck. USC fans are just getting used to it, getting comfortable to Coach Riley adapting and appreciating a defense. And whether or not he got lucky, doesn't matter. Recruiting on that side of the ball, it's trending up. There's a lot of excitement in 2025 for that side of the ball, especially up front. So Lincoln Riley identified D'Anton Lynn, said, "Hey, whatever it takes, whatever the cost, go on over." That was step 1. Step 2, fix USC's defense. That was accomplished in 2024. Step 3, take it to the next level in 2025. So the obvious question, would Coach Lynn make that lateral move from defensive coordinator at USC to be a defensive coordinator at Penn State, his former school, his alma mater, the school that nourished him? Maybe this is looking at it through cardinal and gold glasses. I think Coach Lynn's next defensive coordinator gig, it's probably going to be in the NFL if he's just going to be a defensive coordinator, because his next job in college should be head coach if he wants to be one. Now, while it would be great for business for this channel, because USC fans would go ballistic if that were to come to fruition, or he leaves after a year. Again, great for business, but it would suck for the USC football team. Who knows? Maybe Lincoln Riley has somebody on his Rolodex ready in case it was to happen. And I'm not trying to talk this into existence, but I think it would be foolish not to consider that it is a potential possibility. I'll tell you what, the sooner Coach Lynn names his next linebacker coach, the staff can be completed. And I'll breathe just a little bit easier. On that note, let's kind of transition. Is it possible that USC is going to lose another coach this offseason? I mean, we know Coach Matt Entz. He came to USC to kind of figure out how you recruit at the FBS level. We knew he wanted to be a head coach again at this level. Well, he's now at Fresno State. We knew that was going to happen sooner rather than later. Hoping to get him for 2 years, happens sooner. When you have good assistant coaches, programs, they come poaching, right? That's Lincoln Riley's talked about that. Used to happen to Pete Carroll. It happens to the best of them. Who can USC afford to lose the least? All right, so you got Coach Henney, Coach Nua doing the defensive line. You got Coach Belk doing the secondary. Coach Lynn. Out of those guys who are still around, hit me up in the comments section. Who can USC afford to lose the least? Again, this isn't a knock on any coach, but you could probably replace the secondary coach relatively easy. You got Taylor Mays back there. Why not, right? Some of you might say, well, Sean Nua, he's replaceable. Can't lose Coach Henney. I'll tell you what, it starts and ends with Coach Lynn. That's the one you can least afford to lose. You can rank the others in order as you wish. Hit me up in the comments section. Let me know what you think. Speaking of the comment section, we're going to do my everydayers mailbag in the next segment. Yesterday's third segment, I asked the question, what's taking so long? We'll get to that here in a second. Stick around. We're going to read some of the responses. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC, a little tender love and care. And I always find that decluttering, refreshing, kind of moving things around helps you kind of get back in the routine, gives you a new, fresh outlook. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. Yeah, you need to go check out wayfair.com. They have some really cool stuff. I got my eye on this office chair right now. I'm keeping an eye on that thing. My favorite part, the free part, the free and hassle-free delivery. Yeah, even for their larger items. You want to get some furniture? Free, hassle-free delivery. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and literally, I found everything I needed, no time, just like that. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYF like Frank AIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC, in the third segment, I posed the question, what's taking USC so long to make the playoffs? Lincoln Riley's had 3 years, going into year 4. And basically what I did is I laid out some data points, and I was comparing those to Lincoln Riley's hire to Notre Dame and Washington. Both programs hired their head coach essentially the same time USC hired Coach Riley. So Kalen DeBoer, he took over the Huskies after Washington fired Jimmy Lake. That was 10 games into the 2021 season. Kalen DeBoer took over in 2022. In his second season, 2023, yeah, the Huskies were in the playoffs. Last year, Kalen DeBoer was the first-year head coach at Alabama. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach. His team's playing in the national championship game next week. Yeah. How's that feel? How's that taste, USC fans? Yeah, I know how that tastes. Lincoln Riley, He was hired days before Kalen DeBoer, days before Marcus Freeman. He had a great first year, 11 wins, Heisman Trophy. Since then, USC's won 15 games total in 2 years. Do the math. 7.5 per season. That ain't good. As I mentioned in the segue, the segment that I talked about yesterday, it got some great responses in my feedback. Guys who gave their opinion on YouTube. You should do that too. So I got a couple that I from my everydayers I thought were outstanding. I said, you know what? Occasionally I like to read some of those out loud, agree, or offer counterpoint. So here's a couple that really stood out to me. And I love this one from my everydayer. His name's Big T 4690. Big T 4690. Mark, I believe Lincoln Riley just hit USC at a real rough time. I think following Helton, Dante Williams, who was the interim coach, that the staff had a much steeper climb than most USC fans want to admit. The recruiting lines to the California kids deteriorated under Helton, and recruiting is a relationship that oftentimes takes 3 to 4 years to build or repair. Helton won a Rose Bowl, and Lincoln Riley won 11 games and had a shot at a playoff spot, but the talent has not been there to go on a run since the NCAA took a hammer to the USC program back when Pete Carroll left. The 3 coaches before Pete Carroll coached USC to a combined 89 and 63 overall record. The 5 coaches post Pete Carroll, not including Lincoln Riley, coached USC to a combined 95 and 54 record. Pete Carroll was 97 and 19. Beast. With NIL, the transfer portal, following the Helton gang, and moving on into a much bigger and more physical Big Ten conference, I'm willing to give Lincoln Riley 5 years to get USC back on top. With all that said, I do expect a playoff spot in 2025. Fight on. That is a very well thought out post, and I agree with most of it. The part about recruiting is where I disagree, though. Let me explain why. It's not like Lincoln Riley and his staff aren't familiar with Southern California and haven't recruited California in the past. Reminding everybody, Rayleigh Brown was going to be an Oklahoma Sooner before Coach Riley changed zip codes. Same thing with Malachi Nelson. He was going to be an Oklahoma Sooner before he became a Trojan, before he became a Boise State Bronco, and now he's a University of Texas El Paso Miner. Look, I get the point. I do understand the point that Big T's making. However, I don't want to believe Coach Riley and his staff were at a disadvantage when it comes to recruiting. I really don't. And going into year 4, I don't think it should be an issue. Look, I get the perception out there that Coach Riley makes SoCal recruits second-class citizens based on who he signed. Keep in mind, USC had some specific needs they needed to fill, and there's some nuance involved with NIL and who was willing to give USC a chance, and some of that had to do with Lincoln Riley holding on to Alex Grinch too long, yada, 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 rabble, rabble, rabble. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. All that being said, if you look at USC's 2026 recruiting class, it's California heavy. You got 8 guys in there, 6 from California. Here's another, what I called an A+++ thought. This one's from CK from the Bay. Thanks for the daily show, Mark. Much love for all that you do. Thank you. I do it for you guys. I do it for everybody out there, even the trolls. Anyhow, as far as why USC is taking longer than expected to turn around, I'm going to say trenches, defense, and strength of schedule. Both Washington and Notre Dame have been recruiting and developing the lines well for years. And in UW's case, Chris Peterson should get some credit. Of the 10 Huskies that were drafted in the 2024 draft, 9 were brought in by Chris Peterson. And Notre Dame has been doing well for years, and the team that Marcus Freeman inherited was 11-1 the year before. USC did well in 2022 because they had an offensive line that was laden with upperclassmen. But you couldn't say the same about the defensive line. Say what you want about Alex Grinch, and I'm no fan of his, but he fielded 2 of Oklahoma's 3 best statistical defenses between 2010 and 2022. But that having been said, he was a big-time disappointment here that I have no explanation for. Nobody does. DeBoer and Freeman also inherited better defenses than Riley did. I'm not going to go over the stats. He put out some stats. He did at the end say 2025 is a pivotal year for the program, but there's been a lot of progress, especially if one looks beneath the surface. Here's to continued improvement on both sides of the ball. I will go over his strength of schedule stats that he laid out because I want to make this point. USC's strength of schedule in 2022 was 39th. 2023, it had the 9th toughest schedule, and last year, the 4th toughest schedule. Okay. I loved all the stats, all the data points that CK from the Bay laid out. However, the transfer portal should have been Coach Riley's ace in the hole. Okay. I get it. NIL played a role in this. I understand that. And yes, bringing Alex Grinch back after the Tulane tumble in the Cotton Bowl, yeah, still really hard to swallow. Still stuck right here. And look, everyone has to admit, and Coach Riley has to wear this yoke around his neck for a while. It was a huge mistake. But as far as strength of schedule, last year, 2024, the loss at Minnesota should not have happened. And I get it, the refs screwed USC. Still, I don't think anybody would say Minnesota added to USC's strength of schedule toughness. And I need to remind everybody, Maryland, same thought. They only won 1 game in conference last year. We know who they beat. I was there. You watched on TV if you weren't there. Those 2 losses should not be considered part of USC's toughest strength of schedule. I'm just saying. And I also agree that USC's offensive line got better as the year went on, without a doubt. And the potential on defense is unlimited. So we'll see how things turn out in 2025, because I'll tell you what, another mediocre record, 8-5, 7-6, it's not going to be acceptable to anyone. Nobody. All right. I wish I had more time. I'd read more. In fact, keep hitting me up with your viewer email. I'll do an entire segment just for you guys. But I picked out these 2. They really caught my eye. You give me some well thought out thoughts, you'll get recognition. Just don't come on the show or leave a post. This is whiny. Be specific. What didn't you like? Try and have an adult conversation, and I'll respond accordingly. All right. Till that next episode of Locked On USC. Everyone, you know what to do. And don't forget, get on over there to wearesc.com. Eric McKinney, Scott Schrader, they got you on recruiting. Chris Arledge, myself, Greg Cass is back.